Hi everyone and welcome back to my 100 Days of Practice series. This is day 7 and I'm excited to kind of continue on with this. I had a baby in the last 2 weeks actually, which is why the delay. There was a brief pause in there. He was a little bit early, Timothy James. And I want to still keep this up, but they'll not be probably super regular, but I figured instead of stopping them altogether and trying to get perfect quality, I just want to keep the content coming, especially if people are enjoying it, and I've already gotten some good feedback. So you just might hear some screaming and crying in the background. My wife is taking care of him, but can't eliminate all the noise. So just thought I'd put that out there for the rest of the series. If you're ever wondering, and if you have been following, that's what's going on. So without further ado, at the last video I said we'd pick up with the Prokofiev Toccata, but in the meantime it's Scriabin Fourth Sonata, because I'm sifting through a lot of 20th century works right now. I was originally thinking Barber Sonata and kind of had a few ideas. It'll probably be just experimenting for a couple of weeks until I settle on something, but I've been listening to this piece a lot. I've heard, I think, 9 different people, like Sokolov and Pletnev, Sofronetsky, just pretty much anyone that I could find on YouTube. And I find it to be a perfect piece for what I'm looking for. Very beautiful and very languid and expressive and explosive at the end. And just everything I like about Scriabin, really. So let's take a look at this. Pretty much just first movement issues today. I did a formal analysis, and it's a little vague, but essentially the first movement is just an ABA form with a small little coda. But as I broke it down more, it's really ABAC, meaning like the main theme is a certain amount of time, the B is a contrasting, the A's come back, it's about the same length. And what I first thought was a coda really is sort of a C section in and of itself, because it's actually almost the exact same length as the B. It just doesn't feel as complete of a section. It feels more like a transition to the second movement, which is what it is. He actually marks a taka at the end here, and that means to continue without a pause. So all that being said, 4 sections, 2 of them are A's, and what really stands out in this is this theme. It's funny, I actually haven't even started to sight read it on the piano yet. I've just made notes from all those recordings, like things I liked about rhythm or dynamics or whatever. So I might make a few mistakes with a key like this, but this theme here, and I was intentionally going way too fast just to kind of give a bird's eye view of that. There's that 8 measure phrase, which constitutes the A section, but the whole A is that happening twice. So you get it a second time with a change. And then an extension here. There's this sort of tag. What is this? And then he extends it instead of finishing it with that same tag again. And then that's the end of the A section. The second time you get the A section, it's again 2 of those 8 measure phrases, but we get all this varying texture. It looks like this sort of repeated note figuration. It's a 3-staff thing. Something like this. You know, this idea where there's arpeggios under it and this very light texture above it. And the third time he turns that same sort of thing, but with this shimmery. Yeah, kind of complicated, but you know. Oh, this is going to be fun. I probably will settle on this piece, actually. It's so gorgeous. And when I really get a chance to work on it, I think I could really enjoy it. So anyway, what I find interesting is that my ear always conditioned to that first chord, and I see it's B major 7th. But really, that's not an inherent part of the melody. That's just how it's presented the first time, because already the second time we have a change of chord. The F sharp drops down to E sharp, which changes its function. And then those last 2 times we get... This time, not at all. Now it's some very extended, colorful version of an F sharp harmony, and the same thing the second time. The same harmony. So I find it interesting that we first hear B major, but it never comes back that way. So one thing I want to explore in this first movement is every little moment of the melody, the main theme, and how the context around it builds the drama or changes the narrative. So for example, there's lots of different parts. We have the melody first coming in, enter, and then ta-da, kind of an echo, sort of, or maybe you could go more. I tend to think it's less on the second long note, because he writes tenuto the first one, and then nothing, almost like an echo. Now he writes 3 tenutos, but also there's more rhythmic momentum here. So da, da, da. I think there's this movement behind it where it needs to go forward. And then this one is the most expressive. Da, da, da. And I think that because he adds the roll. I'll link the sheet music in the Google Doc, which is all in the description. You should know that by now if you've been following the series. But just for now, I'll show you. There's this sort of roll that it builds into it. And I think that's a big part of understanding tempo and rubato in this piece is what is he doing with the melody, and how do the things around it change our expressive device. So like the rhythm heightening up, I think sort of indicates to me that it's stirred up emotionally. Da, 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 and then da, da, da. More not heartfelt. I don't want to say more passionate, but there's a fullness to it that shouldn't be ignored. And then what I find interesting, there's the repeat, but then this little tag thing, da, 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 how he finishes the phrase is harmonized in the left hand. What is this with? So that's harmonized in 6s. I'm going to write that in. It looked like it, but I just, with all the double sharps and weird spellings, it's not so clear. So, and to me, that indicates more passion. That this is where the Brahms part of him comes in. He's not at all related to Brahms, nor do I think he emulated Brahms's compositional style. But just this idea of that full-on romantic, over the top, expressive romantic mood. Not sappy at all, not ridiculous, but passionate, definitely. So I think every single moment of the melody is almost like its own drama and drive. This is just first impressions, and again, after hearing it by many performers, they all handle it a little bit differently. Some much less interesting than others. I'm not going to say who or what, because some of it's subjective. But I felt that some performers just sort of play it flat. Something like this. And just kind of sit there and do nothing. And others, almost too much at every moment that I was just talking about, like change the mood entirely, This and then it's just over the top to the point where we don't hear the continuity. So I think it needs to be some mix of both. But what I want to explore probably in the next 4 or 5 of these videos, is each one of those moments and what do we have around it and the other parts that dictate it. So there's only 4 entrants. So let's just take that first note for today. We have, first of all, I'd probably start it with second finger, and then I already said B major 7th. I'm just going to write in the harmonic analysis as best as I can as we're doing this. So it's the 4 chord, because we're in the key of F sharp major. This piece is not atonal, but it's definitely not Mozart either. You know, we don't have a lot of like a 1-5-1 kind of a thing. It's not that kind of a piece, but we can still see harmony all over for sure. So that's as plain as it gets. Root 5th, 7th, 3rd, B major 7th, 4-7 chord there, and then it moves to the middle, comes down. Spelling's a little weird. The A is a non-harmonic tone. I know that because it moves to G sharp despite the notes around it actually being held. So this is, you could theoretically analyze this as its own chord, but the spelling gets weird. With D and E and D, it would be, yeah, no, it couldn't be spelled as a tertian harmony. In other words, a chord used with thirds. So the A just simply doesn't belong. I would call it a passing tone it's just chromatically moving. Which tells me, actually, the chord is just simply that one, which is, it's a half diminished. I just have to figure out what. So we have B, E, D, G. Then it's going to be an E sharp half diminished 7th. Yeah. And then the key of F sharp is just the 7th. So we hit 7 chord half diminished in second inversion. So 4-3. With the A the A natural not belonging. Okay, so there we go. That's the first kind of statement, the long note and the echo. And then just the harmony of the next one is, actually we'll look at that later. Okay, so second time it happens is measure 9. And we start off with something so similar, but the one note changes it entirely. The reason it's changed is because this is not a chord at all. In fact, it's quartal harmony, where it's spelled in fourths. B, E, A, D. Everything is some form of a fourth. We start off with an augmented fourth, which is a tritone, then a perfect fourth, and another perfect fourth. So you can't call this anything, really, other than quartal. You could kind of imply certain things. It's related to the first time. You could call it an alteration of the 4 chord, but I'm not sure it would be heard that way. In any case, we're functioning largely the same way. The A doesn't belong in the next chord, and we go exactly to the same 7 half diminished 4-3 chord after that, and nothing else really changes. I think for fingering, thumb and 5 for the echo notes. The reason for this is because if you do anything but 5, it makes the stretch down to the D sharp really difficult to connect. And I want to be able, you have to lift this bottom note here. I'm going to write a little line there sideways so it doesn't look like a 1. Hopefully that's clear. This has to lift in that voice coming from here, but the melody can connect down to there. So if this is 5, you can play 2 and make that legato. And above all else, the melody should be legato, not the accompaniment or the harmony to it. So, I mean, in terms of if you have to break. So 1, 5, I can connect the top, 2, 3. We're doing everything at the same time. Harmonic analysis, fingering, talking about pedal, etc. So let's, I think same fingering for the second time. And then right hand, left hand resets. All right. I think pedal would just be pretty much on every event. Chord, pedal, melody, pedal, for a clear entrance. You could pedal through it. You don't have to change there because it's part of it. Same harmony. But I think it would be best to pedal again anyway, so that you just get the activation and the true clarity right here. And then this definitely needs a change because of the chromatic notes. And then I'd probably change on the first eighth on the D sharp. Oh, but then you have to change on both. Yeah, so, and then definitely on the left-hand chord. That's the thing about Scriabin. I think a lot of people see him as like a Debussy-like composer, at least early to mid-Scriabin like this, where they just kind of want to treat it like late Liszt or Debussy, you know, that sort of thing, or where everything is just color and all a wash of sound. And I think the issue with that is Scriabin is that in tonally, and yet his writing is like some of the most complicated writing, almost like Bach in the sense of like it's full of counterpoint, and there's this importance of every line. The bass line is clear, the middle line is clear, the A sharp, the A natural, the G sharp, the G sharp, da, da, G natural, F sharp, da, 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 da. You know, there's a line there that's not the melody we're listening to, but if you pedal through that, listen to this, it's just not good. It's just a wash of sound that it doesn't, it's the right effect, but not the right clarity. Like, I can almost get away with it, but I just think that that's inappropriate for the context. Whereas you don't really see Debussy as much writing a piece where there's this melody, you know. You know, he does a lot of whole tone, which can all be pedaled and still sound clean. And you don't see a lot of counterpoint on top of that. You know, not like another line or chromaticism coming up underneath it. Not as much. Even Ravel doesn't do that as much as Scriabin. And I'm only making the comparison because Scriabin, he's not a French composer, but he uses a lot of those French idioms of almost borderline impressionism, but more just this idea of a symphonic tone poem on the piano, where everything is full of orchestral sounds and layers and colors, and very much the same heart of Debussy, or at least moments of that, but with a lot more underpinning and variety. So I say all that to say I think pedaling should basically be there all the time for that level of sound, but also clearing all the time. So never dry, never just dead. That's definitely way too academic sounding, but we don't want a blend that's going to be too frequent. So at least at this opening 2 measures, I would pedal every single event, every note, whether it's accompaniment, bass, melody, right hand, left hand. I don't think there's anything that should be held or sustained through there, from note to note. So there's that. And the second time, the only note, like I said, is the F sharp changing to E sharp. So same logic applies. I think the pedal just simply needs to be there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 6 pedal changes from the first note to the downbeat of measure 3, and measure 9 to the downbeat of measure 11. Now let's look at this third time. So we get this fifth. The biggest thing is just fingering in this, because it you obviously can't stretch all of these notes. I like to find fingering without the use of the pedal, because if you put the pedal down, even if that's what it's going to sound like in the long run, you can kind of get away with a lot of hand movements that are not natural. So I like to just make it sound as smooth and connected and fluid as I can without pedal. So although I can't, actually I could. I can stretch the F sharp, C sharp to B with 5, 2, 1. But even if I couldn't stretch that, and I wasn't able to connect, I think that's still natural to kind of get them in one general swoop. So I'm going to do that fingering. 5, 2, 1. And then my book says 3 on the E sharp, which I don't like because 3 can't stretch to thumb. You can't connect those two unless you turn the wrist in, the elbow comes in toward the body, and it's just a really far stretch. So I mean, you can't connect legato anyway from B to E sharp. So why not just reset to like pinky, and then you can actually get that pinky to thumb stretch. I would say even 4 could work. So I'll write optionally 4 or 5. And then whatever you do, you're just going to come back to same thing. Okay, there's the answer, right? Well, yeah, there's the answer. It should be 5, because this in the second measure of that, measure 36 of the whole piece, it includes the bass note, the E sharp, with the melody D sharp. And you can't get 4 in 2. So 5 and 2 is like your only option, because the top has to be 2 so it can connect to G sharp that follows. So, and then you're going back down to 5 from there. So that's definitely the answer. And we were just sort of looking at those first 2 measures of each statement of the theme for now. So again, you're waiting for this, and then some sort of an echo, but notice this time tenuto's on both, as if he wants the line to keep going, and he says dolce cantabile, quietissimo pianissimo. So very quietly, like he writes the word very quietly, but pianissimo already means very quietly. He just really means it, apparently. Dolce, sweetly or warmly, cantabile, in a singing fashion. So in a low sound plane, but still a warm singing melody on top of that, I think the quality dolce cantabile has to do more with the melody than it does the whole texture. I mean, he doesn't... that's not supposed to sing, and neither should all this garblegook. So, and I mean that in the best sense of the word, not at all criticizing Scriabin's writing. Just as a pianist, sometimes looking at this stuff, it's a little overwhelming at first. It's not that hard in the long run, but all that to say, he writes this word upon the beginning of the melody, not anything else. So I think that's important, that the only thing really warmly singing here is this. And so we have a case here where there's less counterpoint. It's not like the beginning with all this chromaticism. This is where it turns into that sort of Debussy, Ravel, Liszt thing. just everything blurred together. In fact, I don't know that I would change it all in the whole first measure. I definitely would change when the texture goes from A sharp to A natural. I mean, I didn't there, and you can get away with that. But I'm a classicist at heart. You know, I pretty much practice Bach fugues and counterpoint in Beethoven and Mozart almost every day, and get my ears really like listening to the clarity of every line. I think that's what makes my playing as clean as it can be for me, as often as possible. So I'm not sure if that's always to an advantage, but that's just kind of my background. So my tendency would be pedal at the beginning of each measure here, A sharp, and then recatch with the bass note. And then I would probably pretty much change with every right hand change in this case. That's really, to me, what dictates the passage. Although there's something to be said for just the color of this bass note. Although it's not sustained, it is just an eighth note. There's something significant about him writing two notes there, and everything else is just one note. Really, here's what's going on. It's as if the arpeggio figuration is the C sharp, going up and down. It was a bad read, but something like that. And that's the actual arpeggio. And then the F sharp is like a cello that would be just going oh the whole time. So something, if without the pedal, I'll fake this in two hands. You know, something like that, where there's that level underneath it. And it's not notated that way, but probably just for simplicity's sake. Again, I would see this much more as like, that F sharp is like that cello line, whereas the arpeggio is actually more the line of C sharp going to B. And in light of that, I think the pedal can't clean out any past the bass note. Meaning that if you were to change in the middle of measure 36, to get the right hand really clean from A natural to G sharp, you lose the support of the bass and therefore lose the color altogether. And then that goes back down. So yeah, I just think that that's too much. So the one thing that will allow you to break the rule of pedaling through moving lines, especially chromaticism, is that if the actual mood of the music is completely lost, you don't want to change that just for a detail in pedaling. So I'd probably just pedal with the bass note. It's got to be that simple. Maybe like a half or quarter pedal or a little bit of fluttering in between, but basically it's just pedal here, pedal here, pedal here, whatever it is, pedal here. I'd really have to work on that. So there's an idea. And because of that bass note, the harmony is nothing like it was the first time. I already forgot it, but something like that. Or the second time. It's much more stable now. Everything is now relative to that F sharp drone. And that doesn't change until the D, which I find interesting in measure 39. Because he actually accents it. It's like his way of saying, whoa, 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 whoa. I've set up this nice color, and by the way, you know, it's not actually that loud, but by the way, we're in a new harmonic territory. So, two last things. We're in the fourth time now. Luckily, the left hand appears to be exactly the same. Yeah, that's to the pianist's advantage, to not have to relearn a new texture. It's only this. Whatever, even more gobbledygook. that changes, but it's relatively the same chord, just changing on a weird beat, but essentially the same thing. So pedaling wouldn't change, fingering of left hand wouldn't change, the harmony isn't changing, so the context is still the warmth of that F sharp going into the melody. And then I think it's just really important, this is super sparkly. From all the recordings I heard, I wrote down a different word every time, like what they sounded like when I was hearing them. Flicker, starlight, glitter. One I just said move more, because I noticed one pianist, I can't remember who, but somebody just kind of gets into it and really goes. You know, like I'm faking it, but just sort of really stirs it up like a trickle in the ocean or something, or a natural spring. So, yeah. Anyway, there's some context. That's the first two measures of every statement of the theme, and in the next time, I think we'll just probably break down the two measures that follow that, because it's the next kind of element of the theme. So, hope you enjoyed today, and looking forward to the next tutorial. This one's a little shorter, but again, I just wanted to kind of get the content out there. So let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye. Thank you for watching this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, please consider supporting me on Patreon. If you're interested in piano lessons, links to my contact information, as well as this Patreon account, are provided in the description below. I look forward to putting out more content in the near future.